The president said Wednesday he's prepared to deploy up to 15,000 troops to the U.S.-Mexico border. He's been making daily comments and tweets about a caravan of thousands of Central American migrants making their way through Mexico toward the U.S. Now, this group is weeks away from the border, we should point out. Right now, they are about 1,000 miles from the nearest port of entry, most of them traveling on foot. However, the president said Wednesday he's not holding back or taking any risks.
As far as the caravan is concerned, our military is out. We have about 5,008. We'll go up to anywhere between 10 and 15,000 military personnel on top of Border Patrol, ICE, and everybody else at the border. Nobody's coming in. We're not allowing people to come in.
Now, if the U.S. deployed 15,000 troops, it would roughly mirror the American presence in another country, Afghanistan. The president is doubling down on his immigration stance just a week before the midterms. He denied trying to scare voters before Election Day. Zeke Miller joins me now from Washington to calm us all down. He's a White House correspondent for the Associated Press and CBSN political contributor. Zeke, how calm are you? The caravan, weeks away from the U.S. What do we know about this latest call by the president? And what would this many troops, 15,000, what would they do once they arrive at the border?
Those are all really good questions. First of all, the caravan is not an imminent threat to the United States by any stretch. It is weeks away from hitting the southern border.
But even if it got to the border, how big of a threat is it?
Exactly. We have reporters. A lot of news organizations have reporters of them. There are a lot of women and children there. Yes, there are some incidents of some violence, isolated scuffles with Mexican police and authorities there as they made their way up. And so the president, when he says that there are some instances of violence, yeah, there are a few isolated incidents. But talking to our reporters on the ground there, by and large, seems to be fairly peaceful. The people, the majority of the folks who are walking their way toward the United States want to enter the United States because they're looking for a better life. They can claim asylum or they can cross potentially into the United States illegally. That's sort of what the president is warning on, that latter option there. He seems to be ignoring the first. And that's the first part, sending 15,000, up to 15,000 U.S. troops to the southern border, as you pointed out, would eclipse the U.S. presence in Afghanistan, would be many multiples of the U.S. deployment countering ISIS in the Middle East right now. And those troops, many of them would not be armed. They'd be in a support and engineering logistics capacity.
Legally, they can't do a lot more than pitch tents and work in a support role.
Exactly. They can fly drones, they can fly helicopters, drive some trucks, move things around.
Sounds fun.
Serve as eyes and ears. But it's not like they are going to be forming some sort of picket line, stopping and apprehending border crossers. They are not allowed to do that under federal law. And so that's really the challenge here. This is certainly a big PR stunt by the president, a big show of force against this migrant caravan, but also for his base just days ahead of the midterm elections.
So sticking with the subject of things you are or are not allowed to do in this country, the president said Tuesday he plans to end birthright citizenship, at least as it pertains to the children of undocumented residents of the U.S. Now, GOP Speaker Paul Ryan immediately disagreed with the president, pointing out the 14th Amendment, which guarantees citizenship to anyone born here. How have other Republicans responded?
It's pretty mixed. There are Republican lawmakers who are on record saying that this is like Marco Rubio, who say this is a defining characteristic of what makes the United States great and has contributed over decades and the last century and a half toward the great diversity that our country enjoys. There are other Republicans who say that it is essentially a weakness that it leads to long-term demographic issues. That is not necessarily a majority opinion within the Republican Party. What is clear is that there's overwhelming consensus among Republicans and Democrats in this town, legal scholars and the like, who say that the president cannot do this by executive action. The president's justification of that today was quite odd. That President Obama used DACA, executive action on DACA, for so-called dreamers, young people brought to this country illegally as children by no fault of their own, to defer deportation and provide them a path to work status. And that was something that many Republican attorneys general sued, and President Donald Trump's own Justice Department argued was unconstitutional and overstepping of of the president's ban. So that's the justification that Donald Trump is doing. So executive action is bad when President Obama does it, but from President Donald Trump's perspective, when he wants to alter the Constitution essentially by executive action, that is something he can do. It is a very complicated, sort of self-serving in a lot of sense, but politically expedient argument by the president.
Now, I learned way back in kindergarten that there are 7 days in a week. In this week ahead, President Trump has, by our count, 11 rallies scheduled. That's a lot of rallies. Let's play a little bit of sound of something the president said hitting on a range of issues at an American workers event not long ago.
The fact is we have to start taking care of our own country, because we were taking care of other countries and we were letting our country go to hell in trade and in so many other ways. We can't do that. We can't do it with immigration, with the borders, with trade, so many different ways, and we're changing that.
From the economy to immigration, where exactly is the White House's focus before the midterms?
Well, certainly the biggest closing argument we've been hearing directly from the president has been immigration. That's why the issue of the caravan has sort of brought that into the fore from the president. We've seen him hit that over and over and over again. The next 11 days, which might feel like a month or might feel like a second, depending on what whether you work in a campaign or you're sort of living this final sprint at the finish line. The president's been hitting the same points. He's been hitting immigration. He's been hitting Kavanaugh. He's been hitting the economy, and certainly. You look at the stock market the last couple of days, the volatility there is making that last one a little bit more challenging for him to make. But certainly when it comes to activating Republican voters, Justice Kavanaugh and his confirmation process about a month ago is still a fairly significant motivating force for Republicans. And the president's trying to keep that on their mind as these try to get as many of them to the polls on Tuesday.
All right, Zeke Miller for us. Zeke, thank you very much.
Thank you.